This video will give an overview of basic good academic writing practice. So during this video workshop, you'll be able to understand the purpose of academic writing and recognise the good features of it. You'll be able to write in the passive voice and identify formal writing and know how to structure different assignment types. Here's what the session will cover and what it will not cover. Our academic writing guide can be found at libguides.staffs.ac.uk/academic_writing. So what is academic writing? Take a moment, maybe pause the video to think what this may be, and then we'll give you a definition and some examples of good and poor practice. So Hopkins and Reed describe it as a piece of formal writing designed to demonstrate you've understood, questioned, and evaluated a topic in depth. Here we've got a table of good or poor practices when it comes to academic writing. You might want to pause the video and take some time to decide what do you think are examples of good academic writing. So here's the examples of good academic writing. Objective based on research from good academic sources of information, well structured, written in the third person or passive voice, unless it's a reflective assignment, in which case it may be written in the first person. That you're going to use a good range of resources, books, ebooks, journal articles, or websites from professional organisations, maybe approved by your tutors. It should have correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation throughout, and use formal language. Avoid the use of contracted words like can't, don't, it's. Write in full, cannot, do not, it is. And finally, it's referenced by in-text citations to show where your sources of information are from, and a reference list at the end outlining all the sources of information used within the assignment. And here we've got the poor practice. It shouldn't be biased. You should aim to look at alternative viewpoints. Avoiding colloquial or slang language. Avoid writing in the first person unless it's a reflection. And finally, it shouldn't be subjective. It shouldn't be personal and emotional in your opinion. It's subjective based on the research. So to summarise, there's the good practice. And here's the poor practice. Just notice there in the poor practice it mentions avoiding using e.g., i.e. Again, fully when you're writing academically, for example. And if you're going to use any abbreviations, spell them out in full first before putting them in brackets. Thereafter, you can use the abbreviated version. There may be some abbreviations that are very commonplace, like, for example, if it's a health essay, NHS, GP. There are some abbreviations that within the subject area are expected to be known anyway, so check with your tutors for that. Here's an example of writing in the first person using I. So that's the first person, and we're going to change that into the third person, or what's known as passive voice. So it's the third person that should be used in the majority of essays. So you can see we've changed that I chose this method into this method was chosen because. And I think that theory X is best has been changed into research demonstrates that theory X is most effective because the third person. So academic essays should be written in the third person, literature reviews, anything like that. There is sometimes an exception with professional courses. What you might find for these professional courses where you have to talk about your role, you may actually write in the first person in a first paragraph. You may say, my role is, and after that, you will go to the third person. So you might get the odd exceptions, and it's always best to check with your tutor if you're in any doubt. Let's have a look at formal versus informal language. And we've got here a sentence that's sounding very informal. The team got together and went off to London to check out how the project was getting on, but could not make out where it was up to. Very informal. Take a moment and pause the video if you like to try and decide what are the informal words or phrases in there, and have a think how they could be converted into more formal language. So identified there are the more informal parts. Got together, went off, check out, was getting on, could not make out where it was up to. And let's see if we can replace that with some more formal language. And there could be a variety of answers here. The one shown isn't necessarily the right one. There could be many alternatives. So there's the informal version, and here's a more formal version. So instead of got together, we've got met, we've got travelled instead of went off to, investigate instead of check out, was progressing instead of getting on, and instead of could not make out where it was up to, failed to discover how far it had advanced. So the whole sentence sounded much more formal. The team met and travelled to London to investigate how the project was progressing, but failed to discover how far it had advanced. Much better. Now to take a look at the different types of assignments you may get. Essay, report, presentation and reflection. There's a getting started guide to assignments, and this can be found at libguides.staffs.ac.uk/assignments/get_started. First of all, essays. There'll be an introduction that's roughly 10% of the word count. It's not a hard or fast rule. It could be shorter, especially if you've got a piece of work with a very short word count. So you don't want to waste too many words on an introduction, and it may be a bit longer as well. It depends on the assignment. Basically, that introduction is going to tell the reader what it's all about, giving the essay a focus and outlining its scope. It's worth starting and writing a few words for your introduction right at the beginning, but you can go back at the end to finish it off, having known how the essay has come out. At the end, you've got a conclusion, again, roughly 10% of word counts. There shouldn't be anything new in this conclusion unless you've been asked to make recommendations. It's important in the conclusion to revisit the assignment brief, any research question or any learning outcomes. Gather together what has been found out basically, taking note of answering any question or essay title. In the middle you've got the main body, and this will be split into sections, and these sections should cover the learning outcomes and they should be in a logical order. It's important to plan an essay before diving in, and there's a variety of ways that you could do this. You could do like a mind map that's displayed on this slide, or it could just be a list or something digitally. But when you get the learning outcomes and assignment brief, you can start to plan a framework, a very rough framework for that essay. And then after you've done a bit of reading, that'll enable you to make your framework a bit more accurate. A report is essentially a very similar structure to an essay, but it does contain headings and subheadings as well. It will contain potentially tables, charts, diagrams included, and have some appendices at the end if you need to add on further information. Always be guided by tutors as to what to include in appendices, as it varies between subject areas. If it's a research report, we've got a basic structure here. You've got your title page. There will be some contents in there. And often the introduction and literature review can be combined in a report, but they might be separate. There'll be a methodology of how you did the work. This could be a practical methodology, or it could be a methodology relating to literature searching, like a systematic review. There'll be findings or results, there'll be discussion, or it may be called analysis, followed by a conclusion that may include some recommendations. You'll have your reference list at the end, followed by those appendices. For presentations, bear in mind the 4 Ps. It's going to be like planning out any other assignments, like an essay or report, looking at the assignment brief and learning outcomes. You'll need to do a plan. Plan out the slides, what's going to go in them to meet those learning outcomes. You need to prepare the slides as well as yourself by practicing before you actually present. Look at things like timing, especially. A lot will depend on how the presentation is to be delivered. Is it in person or is it online? Is it a recorded video? Take all these things into account when you start to plan. Many subjects have to undertake reflection activities, and reflective essays should incorporate reflective models. You can see we've got the Gibbs reflective model there as an example. Sometimes tutors will ask you to choose your own model, or they may suggest some. These reflections are usually written in the first person, but there are some tutors who want them written in the third person, so always check if you're unsure. The reflective model is really useful in that it gives you a framework to set out your essay. Be careful about being too descriptive when writing reflections. Remember, it's the evaluation and it's the analysis that will really get the marks. And make sure they are targeted on the learning outcomes. Final tips, again, the number one priority is to satisfy the assignment brief and learning outcomes. If part of a learning outcome isn't covered, however good the rest is, you may not even pass the assignment. So this is vital, and you should keep them close throughout the assignment and self-check, looking at them at the end. In that assignment brief, look for keywords, and I'm talking about things like analyze, evaluate, apply, and make sure you're doing that. Try to avoid being too descriptive wherever possible, and it is a bit of a balancing act because there will need to be some description, especially to set a context. But if you can keep that as brief as possible and use your word count to analyse, evaluate, and apply, and all those higher level academic writing skills that will get you higher marks.